Welcome to Business Mastery with Dawn Kennedy, your quick under 45-minute dose of expert insights and strategies to make a positive impact on your business and life. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about identifying those things that your competitors probably aren't doing and some differentiation. And we're also going to be talking about some things like cash flow, which needs to be part of that equation. So I have Michael on here to talk all things how to identify what your competitors are not doing so that you can move in and fill those gaps. So thank you so much for joining me today, Michael.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm excited. Can you tell everyone who you are and who you serve?
Yes. So my name is Michael Barbarita. The name of my company is Next Step CFO. We're a fractional CFO and strategic implementation firm, which means we combine CFO services with strategic implementation. So if you look at like CFOs in the Fortune 500, they don't get their jobs unless they're strategic. But for some reason, fractional CFOs have a tendency to get away with that. I say that that's wrong. And so that's why we do both fractional CFO services and strategic implementation. We combine the two so that we know that when we implement a strategy, we know the financial ramifications of that strategy. And so we serve business owners that are doing usually between 200,000 and 2 million. That's where most of my average client does $1.5 million, but that just happens to be an average number. But I have served companies that have done as little as 200,000. I've actually served startups as well. But essentially companies that do 200,000 to 2 million is kind of my sweet spot. I'm a small business owner at heart. I owned retail, manufacturing, and service companies all of my life. I've owned a specialty ski retailer called Ski Town USA in the Boston area. I owned a frozen cookie dough manufacturer called Cookies to Scoop. I owned a outpatient rehabilitation facility named Freedom Therapy Center where I fell on my face. And so I have a lot of actual practical business ownership experience. So I know what it's like to have no money in the company bank account on Wednesday and a payroll due on Friday. Put it that way.
Yeah, amazing. So that is this audience all day long. And I'm really excited to go into this because I think sometimes when people start to realize that maybe they're reaching a skill cap, right? So they're a founder, they've been working for a while, they built it to a certain amount. Now they know they need some fractional help. They need some forecasting. It's not just the snapshot in time information to make those decisions. But, to your point, you're right. I think most of the time when people do fractional, they come in and the expectation is it's just a little wedge. It's just this one little thing that we need. Rather than, really understanding that the second and third order effects of your decisions are going to affect your top line revenue and your bottom line. So can you talk a little bit about how you've merged the two for small businesses?
Well, yes, because first of all, CFO services are essentially there's like the little things on the side that we help business owners sell their business or buy a business. Those are, we help them get bank loans, bank financing, all that. Those are on the side. The primary are solving cash flow problems, identifying the critical metrics in the business, and then business and cash flow forecasting. Those are the primary. Then the fourth is strategic implementation, which marries the two. Which essentially marries the two. So, but, with respect to solving cash flow problems, we go into, things like, your accounts receivable, how you pay your accounts payable. But we also go into compelling offers with respect to cash flow, because if you don't have a compelling offer, you're not bringing enough business in. And if you have a compelling offer, that's where you start bringing more business in. That's a strategy, though.
Right.
So although I'm solving cash flow problems, I'm adding a strategy to that. The other strategy that I usually add to solving cash flow problems is upsell and downsell and cross-sell.
Right.
So I add those components, but once again, that's a strategy. Identifying accounts receivable issues, giving enough of a deposit, getting enough of a deposit from a customer. Those are all practical CFO cash flow issues but I add the strategic to
Right.
that.
Right. And that's important because I think a lot of times people don't necessarily know how to read the financials to figure out which are the loss leaders that small businesses should not be doing loss leaders. The
Right.
49-cent ketchup at Kroger for you to buy the buns and the meat and the milk is a little bit of a different business strategy than you having a loss leader and not being able to make up the difference. So
Very
to
good.
your point, those opportunities that you can find those compelling offers with the upsells and the downsells. Actually, those are all going to be drivers that let's cross into differentiation, right? So you had a ski company or have a ski company, and people
Yeah.
are like, had, okay. And
Yeah.
people are like, oh, we know what ski people sell for skiers, right? I mean, there's just an assumption, I think, that people will look at your business and kind of know what you do. And the reality is every single one is going to be different, depending on the owner, depending on the model, depending on the demographic they serve, depending on the clientele. So, can we talk a little bit about how you identified in the ski community your positioning and differentiation? And then let's talk about how we identify this, and let's give the listeners a chance to think through sort of, hey, am I trying to follow something that actually isn't working for me because I am different?
There were two things that I could talk about that apply to compelling offers. There are two components there's five components to a compelling offer. I could talk about two of them in my ski town experience. My ski business, that was the name of the company, Ski Town USA. So, first of all, um, so what the first thing we did in each instance is identify the problem that the customer had. Okay, so the problem the customer had in the ski industry, the perception that they had in the industry, is that the ski they are being sold, they have no idea if the ski they are being sold by some hot shot skier, dazzling them to death, is the right ski for them until they go it up on the mountain and try it out. Now they have trust in the hot shot skier, maybe, unless he's too much of a hot shot, or she's too much of a hot shot. But the bottom line is that generally they don't trust it. It's too much of a hot shot, and they don't know until they get the ski up on the mountain. So what we did is we did what was called a risk reversal, where the seller in the transaction takes most or all the risk. So since that was the problem, what we did is we did what we call the ski guarantee. Ski the ski three times. You don't like it? Bring it back for a brand new pair and keep bringing it back until we get it right. Now, the mindset of my managers and employees is, oh my God, um, there's gonna be thousands of pair of skis coming back, and we're gonna lose a ton of money. My mindset, and by the way, mindset is very important in developing business strategy. The mindset that you have from 0 to 250,000 is totally different than from 250,000 to a million, million to 3 million.
Right.
My mindset was, number one, my competitors wouldn't do it in a billion years. And number two, all the customer really wanted was a great ski experience. That's all they wanted. They didn't want to put one over on the business owner. We sold 8,000 pair of skis the first year we implemented, a 25% increase in the previous year, and only 8 came back. The
Wow.
next year, 11,000 pairs sold, 14 came back. So that was a risk reversal is a component of a compelling offer. Okay, because the risk is being transferred from the buyer to the seller. And so I took all the risk, but as you can tell, all the customer wanted was a great ski experience. So but they had the assurance of knowing that if the ski wasn't right for them, because they hate that, it ruins the day. If you ever ski, it ruins the day. If you have a bad ski experience because your equipment, your boots hurt, or because we had the same thing with a boot guarantee, your boots hurt, or your skis aren't right, it ruins the day. You pay a fortune for the lift ticket. You spend hours to get to the mountain, and your day is ruined. But all they wanted was a great day. May it be 3 days, may it be 20 days. All they wanted was that. And 99% of the customers out there all want great experiences with whatever they're buying.
Right.
So that was one. The second one is packaging and bundling is another component of a compelling offer, because packaging and bundling is perception of value. Now, everybody and his brother, and it still happens today, everybody and his brother who owns a ski company packages skis, bindings, and poles. But what we did is we took the most popular ski graphics and we went to the clothing department and created packages matching those ski graphics: a hat, a sweater, a pant, and a parka, matching them all up. So that once we sold one of the more popular ski graphics to a customer, we walked them over to the clothing department and said, look, this package matches this ski package.
Love it.
And they sold like hotcakes. It was unbelievable. And guess what? My competitors never copied it. It was too much out there for them.
Yeah. So let's
And the ski guarantee, they never copied. It was too out there.
talk about that. Let's talk about this idea of risk and sometimes needing to be not so risk averse when it comes to doing those differentiations. So your differentiations of basically you buy it, but you try it, and you can bring it back, and your differentiation of, hey, we also have these other ways to serve you by giving you something that matches, something that'll be fashionable, something that'll be fun on the slopes. So taking those two things, both of them, of course, did require a little bit of risk. You're talking about that mindset shift. Did you start this immediately, or did you have early on successes that I say this without any disrespect, but a lot of times we'll have early success because we just happen to have, a passion, a market match, and things are good. But it's that sustainability, right? That third year, that fifth year when things change. So, where did you implement these two more risky strategies?
Yeah, well, I had to do something different because price was the only differentiator,
Okay.
right? In all these competitive business that we're all basically in, unless we're, I don't know, we got a cure for cancer or something, we're always battling somebody else, and the only differentiator is price. So we had to differentiate ourselves so that we could charge a higher price, because with the guarantee, we were able to charge a higher price, and with the packaging, we were just able to do more volume because of that. Okay, we went real, but the prices, if you took the prices individually, okay, it would add up if they bought it all a la carte, or maybe there was a $5 difference at the most. But they didn't do that math. What they were involved in was the matching between my skis are going to match my clothing. Oh my God, that's like, that's worth about $50 to $100 for just that. So, and then I'm getting it in a package. Oh God. But here's the mindset shift, Don. If a customer came to our store before the ski guarantee and said, these skis you sold me, I don't like them. Guess what we would do? We'd go to the rack, we'd get them a new pair, and that was the end of it, free of charge. All I did was put in my offer to make my offer more compelling. That's all I did. I do it. I was going to do it. I did it anyway, but that's what gave me the idea. A customer came back and said, these skis aren't good for me. And so, okay, no questions asked. We went to the wall and said, okay, let's try these. And if they don't like these, bring them back. Okay. So that's what gave me the idea. I thought we're going to do it anyway.
Right.
But my employees' mindset was they're gonna put one over on us. They're gonna come back. If we're gonna have some skiers who are gonna come back 41 times because they're just gonna get a new pair every year, and this is gonna be wonderful. The furthest thing from their mind.
So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because in this risk, right, we want to have some risk mitigation. We want to know if we need to pivot if something's not working. But reality is your mindset of taking the risk on as the owner, by the way, that's your right to do. Um, why do you think that the people working for you thought that your customers or your clients would not see this as just an additional sort of belt and suspenders thing rather than an opportunity to take advantage. Any
Well, they
idea?
start they start well, first of all, they did see it as an opportunity, but it was too good,
Mm,
okay, in their eyes. And the reason why they have that mindset is their employees. Employees have an employee mindset. An employee mindset is also somewhat of a consumer mindset. Not really, but it kind of did happen to my employees where they said, well, if I was a consumer, because they were skiers. So if I was a consumer, I'd really rake you over the coals because I'd love to have the ski. I'd love to ski a ski three, because they were skiing 80 days a year. I'd love to have a skier three times, then come back in a brand new pair. I'll try Rosignol, then I'll try Elan, then I'll try K2, then I'll try, this will be so much fun. That's the mindset they had because they were skiers. But the skiers never had, but the actual skiers who bought from us who were customers, they just cared about having the right pair. That's it.
right. Right. That's interesting. That is so interesting that, as employees or as consumers, it feels like they were much more risk averse than
Oh,
you
yeah.
were as the owner with everything on the line. So, let me ask you this, because again, you do CFO work and you work as a strategist. How often do you go into companies where there's a side that is so much more risk averse than another, or do you typically work with those business owners that are maybe a little more risk tolerant?
The business owners who are risk tolerant are the ones that grow the most and the fastest. Okay. The ones who aren't, or the ones who are stuck in that 0 to 250 example I gave you, and it's different levels for everybody. But for example, you have to have a different mindset from 0 to 250 than you had. I'm sorry, you have to have a different mindset from 250 to a million than you had from 0 to 250. A lot of the business owners are stuck in that 0 to 250 mindset, and so it takes time, and sometimes a long time, to get them out of that and into the and it sometimes it just simply takes repeating the strategy. Well, why don't we do a risk reversal that looks like this? Yeah. And then, well, and then a month later, 3 months later, 6 months later, why don't we do the risk reversal we talked about 3 to 6 months ago? That looks like this. And then, sometimes they come around because what happens is they feeling that sticky feeling, that stuck feeling. And so that we all encounter. And so when they feel that, then they start to open their mind a little bit. But it's still a tough stretch.
Yeah, and I can imagine too if somebody is hiring a fractional and they're looking at the numbers for the first time and maybe they're finding those profit leaks that they didn't realize were going on, and some of these things that you kind of fix right up front, that would
Right.
have more risk tolerance as you're moving through because cash flow is better. Right? So we're
Right.
we're not praying on Thursday night at 2 in the morning that that vendor check finally clears and it's available for payroll. So, I think there's a lot of misconception about cash flow. It has really nothing to do with your revenue. It's the availability of your money. So,
Right. Like, for example, it doesn't take any mindset when I see like a accounts receivable problem and I say, well, you've got to send 10 monthly statements and you got to call these people.
mhm,
Okay. A client does, in a recent example, a client did that, increased cash flow 200,000 in 10 days.
yeah,
But there was no risk associated with that other than some people do feel it's risk because they're being a little pushy with the customer to get the money. So some people still feel a little risk, but for the most part, when you're starving, when you feel the hunger pain of, no money in the company bank account, you kind of make that call.
got it. Okay. So, really, this is a mindset shift. Risk tolerance needs to develop. If you solve those immediate cash flow issues that make you feel insecure, you are probably going to be opening up to, again, this compelling offer that you're talking about. But let's talk about how do you find those gaps within your industry? And, we can definitely talk about, we have been taught to do like competitor analysis and things like that. And less talk about looking at things maybe from a a different perspective. So how are we looking at this differently to find those gaps beyond studying our competitors?
Yeah. The only reason why I would have a client study a competitor is because I'm making the point that they look exactly the same as my client. And then that's the end of that's the end of the analysis right there.
Yeah,
So,
powerful.
yeah. But then what we do beyond that is we have what's called a conversion formula. It's a four-part formula that converts prospects to either the next step of your sales process or to sales themselves. Okay. And that four-step formula is kind of hopefully will answer your question. So, uh, because what we found when we were writing the our book called Powerful Business Strategies, um, when we do a research for the book, we found that the key to successful marketing, we had to go all the way back to 1931, by the way. The key to successful marketing is that you have to enter the conversation that's taking place in the head of the prospect. So how do you do that? Well, we feel through our research that it's centered around two things. Number one, the problem the customer has that they don't want, and the solution they want they can't find. So in the conversion formula, the first two components is number one, we call captivate. It's a headline. It's the first thing that you say when a customer comes in contact with your brand. It's the problem they have that they don't want. It's usually a problem within the industry. If you recall, I said the problem the customer had in the ski industry
Yeah.
was that they never really knew if the ski they were being sold was the right ski for them until they got up in the mountain and tried it out. That was the problem. Okay. If you're in the painting industry, the problem isn't that the customer can't choose the proper paint. The problem is that they don't come on time. They make a mess of the house. And they don't clean up. Essentially, there's some other things too, but that's what you have. That's the customer perception. So if that's the customer perception, that's the problem the customer has. They don't want. So if you could come up with resolutions to those problems, and that's the second step of the conversion formula that we call fascinate. So captivates the problem, fascinates the solution. Once you captivate and fascinate, and by the way, the solution is a subheadline. So you have the problem, you address the problem that the customer has, they don't want, captivate. Fascinate, you address the solution they want, they can't find. Then you have time to educate them. And the educate is how your solution is superior to the competition. And then finally, the fourth component is you make an offer that's so compelling that the customer can't say no, like the ski guarantee as an example. And there are five components to a compelling offer. If you'd like, if I have time to
Yeah,
go through those.
definitely.
Okay. One is scarcity and urgency. So scarcity, there's only 3 left. Urgency, my offer is good till Friday. Now, a lot of people will say, yeah, that makes sense. Scarcity and urgency, I guess that could get people to make a decision. But are we being pushy? And what I say to that is, do you believe in your product or service? And they say yes. I said, then you're doing a customer a disservice if you're not making it easier for them to say yes to your offer. And that could be any one of these components, but I talk about it with urgency and scarcity because people are afraid to be pushy.
Mm.
And so this is, so I asked, if you don't believe in your product and you don't believe that your option is the absolute best option for that customer, then you're doing them a disservice by not helping them, facilitating them to say yes to your offer, to say yes to themselves, really. A customer doesn't say no to you, they say no to themselves.
Right.
Okay, so that to get the customer to say yes to themselves, scarcity and urgency. That's one. Second is risk reversal. We talked about that. Okay, that's the second component of a compelling offer. Third is adding more value to your product or service. And let me explain where I did that. So when I was in the frozen cookie dough business, the problem so I always start with that. The problem the customer had is they didn't want to waste valuable oven space baking cookies, right? If they were a pizza parlor, which was one of my target markets, they wanted to bake pizza. They didn't want to hog up space that bakes pizza with cookies. Okay. So what we did, and by the way, The average opening order was $50.
Mhm.
Okay. I gave away a $200 convection oven. That was my cost with the purchase of any opening order. So I had a $50 opening order. I gave away 200. Most people would not do that. Why did I do that? Number one, it solved the problem that the customer had. Number two, I believed in my product. And number three, I knew the long-term value of my customer was $5,000. So now, would you exchange 200 for 5,000?
Right.
Okay. So, but I added more value to my cookie dough, was able to increase my prices as a result because I offered that added value. Okay. Price became irrelevant
Right.
when I offered that because the convection oven they could use for other things too. I mean, I had all the value in the world to them. They didn't even have one. They just had the big crazy oven that went up to 900 degrees to bake the pizza. Okay. So that was the third component, adding more value. The fourth component is packaging and bundling, like I did at Ski Town with the clothing packages, the perception of value. The fifth component of a compelling offer is the most difficult. It's being indifferent and disconnected to the outcome
Right.
and being transformational, not transactional. Well, let me explain what I mean by that. So, with respect to being disconnected to the outcome, here's something that I use once in a while. I'll say, so whether you work with me or someone else, there are 5 steps to a compelling offer that you need to understand and implement if you're going to differentiate yourself from your competitors. And then I go through those. But notice I said, if you work with me or someone else, but I'm the one who's presenting the 5 critical steps. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's one. So that's one strategy of this being disconnected. There are several others. The second thing, as I said, is, and this is really important, we are we are too transactional in our approach versus transformational. Now, in many respects, we can't help it. Okay. But um, you have to find out what the prospect's number one goal is, number one objective, number one dream. There's a technique for doing that, which I can't go into, but there is a technique for doing that. But once you find that out, you constantly have to bring the person back. For example, they'll say, you'll explain the features, advantages, and benefits of your product. You'll explain the price. These are all getting the customer thinking about a transaction. You have to get them to think about the transformation, whatever their number one goal is. And if they say like they have to think about it, oh, maybe we have a disconnect. Oh, but when you say it, what is it? What is it? And they'll say, well, the price, the terms, all the transaction stuff, the features, advantages, the benefits. I have to think about all that. Oh, we have a disconnect. Um, it's really not about my program. It's about, and you explain what their number one goal is and repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. That's what it's about. You really have to think about that
Mm.
because that's the transformational element.
Right.
And so that's about being transformational. That's very compelling.
It is. Absolutely. When you are able to describe the not the features and the benefits, but the outcome and the
Right.
transformation, not only does it make it
Right.
easier to do business with you, I would say that the loyalty of the business to work with you is probably unmatched because they know that you are serving, their highest good, that you're doing this because you are invested in helping them make something that is going to differentiate them and be, hopefully successful in the market. So then that's my next question because I know I've got people listening in and they're going to be like, but what if it doesn't work? What if we have this compelling offer and my audience dot dot dot? So I'd like you to talk a little bit about sort of those you know pivot decisions or little tweaks that need to happen or second and third order effects because everything we do, and I want to just be very clear for the audience, all needs to be tested and tweaked and tried, but you will find it if you invest your time in doing this differentiation work and making sure that, you're clean as far as going into what you want to offer to the world. So would you agree?
Yeah, Don, you said it. The beautiful thing about being in business and a business owner, in my opinion, is you get to test just about anything. I could have tested it with 10. I did. I tested the ski guarantee with about, I don't know, 50 to 100 uh, uh, prospects.
Uh-huh.
And a salesperson said, yeah, they bought right away. But, the salesperson was skeptical because they're going to probably bring it back. All right. But they bought right away. It was a great selling point. It didn't matter what the price was. That's the feedback I was getting. Test, test successful. Let's move forward. Now let's advertise it.
Right.
Okay. I didn't have the first 50 to 100 people that took advantage of the offer we didn't advertise. So we just told 150 to 100 people. That's nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the beautiful thing about being in business is that you can test. I love that. But because business owners, they're so anxious to get their idea out or their concept out to the world that they skip the testing part. They go right for the jugular and they blow their brains out. I hate that. I
Yeah.
never suggest that.
Right. Yeah, the testing, the tweaking, the different marketing, all the strategies, that's an important part about getting to this compelling offer. But then let's talk about the longevity when you finally get it dialed in and get it right. For how many years did you run this ski program?
Well, we ran it. We sold the business 3 years after. We ran it every year, and it kept increasing. And we uh, we our predecessor did not continue it, but I don't know. And our predecessor didn't continue with the clothing packages either. So that's what happens. If somebody takes it over, has different ideas. They were fairly successful. But uh, so we would have continued it forever, or as long as we were still increasing, as long as it was still an attraction, and as long as everybody else didn't do it, and then now I had to come up with something else. That happens sometimes. It didn't happen in this case. Don't ask me why, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's a great point because again, this goes back to the very beginning of this episode where we were talking about your unique differentiation that even when selling the business, it doesn't mean that the next person is going to follow your unique path. They're going to find their own and
Yeah.
what works for them. So, yeah, I think it's incredibly important too though again, to highlight the fact that you start from industry wide. And so your predecessor was probably solving another industry wide gap, if
Yeah.
you will, that
Yeah.
they found, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that
how
they like better. That they like better.
that they liked better, right? So here's the comforting part of the podcast is that the markets are shifting, consumers change, businesses change, things change. So you can actually have differentiators that are there for a time and then you find another one. Is that we don't have to nail it the first time. They
Absolutely. This is a constant quest
Yeah.
to find differentiation because once a competitor catches on, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but when they do, your differentiation now is like theirs, and therefore you have to come up with something else. But it comes down to identifying the problem that the customer has and making a little tweak relative to how you go about solving that problem and making sure when you do solve the problem that it fits into your logistics, whatever those are operationally.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask the $64,000 question. And that is I happen to know that we have been taught again to study competitors. You're saying we're not going to study the competitors, we're going to go to the industry. There are a lot of business owners that will do an amazing market research inside their business plan. They start up, they get their funding, and then they don't actually maybe look at it again. Maybe they looked at Statista once or something like that. So let's talk about the $65,000 question. How are you staying ahead of the industry problems that customers feel so that you can fill those gaps?
Okay. Well, first of all, our business and cash flow forecasting keeps people, see, a CFO is forward looking.
Right.
Okay. So everything we do essentially is forward looking. So we're anticipating, we're always, if something is currently working, we're always anticipating that it's going to stall at some point. Always. So we're always constantly looking at the problems that the customer has. We're not see, I don't like to look at the competitors other than that beginning stage that I mentioned
Right.
because, yeah, because people get obsessed with it. And where they get obsessed with it is, oh, we got to match their price
Mhm.
or we got to be under them. We like where we're at price wise because we're kind of in the middle. They love that middle where we're not too high, but we're not too low. And but that's damaging. That's a damaging mindset. It's adding
Unfortunately.
more value to the product. Keep adding
Yeah.
value. That's another thing that once we have a successful, let's say we've identified the right problem, we have a successful, let's say risk, in this case, let's say a risk reversal. We now have to look to add more value, the other component of a compelling offer, or we have to package and bundle things together. That's another or we have to train our salespeople to be indifferent to the outcome, or we have to train them to be transformational and not transactional, or we have to teach emergency and scarcity.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, it is in the small business community, and in well-meaning training and guidance and competitive analysis is part of the business plan for the SBA. We know this, so we understand that that's been the traditional
Yeah.
for years and years. So if that's how people have been doing the business and making those decisions, it's not wrong necessarily, but I think that they're missing potentially opportunities if they were to go and forward look at what the consumer is doing or whoever their target audience is or how long people are making buying decisions, things like that. Um so looking forward and anticipating a stall, I want to dive in there a little bit, just to let people realize that this is the evolution of a business, and it can be a beautiful thing if you're not afraid of
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that I think that's the issue with most business owners. That it's that fear of the unknown and the fear of change. Even though the mindset has to change, they know that. The ability to adapt, the ability to adapt is one of the critical components of being a business owner.
it.
The ability to adapt and to be flexible to change. It's one of the criteria that one needs to be able to really have a long-term business. And so if you do not have the ability to adapt, you're going to stay in that 0 to 250 a lot longer than you thought, or 250 to a million, a lot longer than you thought. And so the ability to adapt and be flexible to change is critical. My job is to try to be as convincing as possible to be able to adapt and be flexible to change and to identify what that change is and identify the risks and opportunities of that change. That's
Right.
my job.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just very comforting to hear that when you're forward thinking, there is a chance at some point that things are going to have to adapt and change. And if you even look at, remember the Apple iPod thing with
Yeah.
the music,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So obviously when streaming started coming down and stuff, the adaptations may be external to your own business. But if you are forward thinking and looking at your differentiators, it shouldn't catch you by surprise. You should actually almost, I think the mindset shift is we're excited to see what happens next.
Right. And Don, decisions should be made on a visionary basis, not on an immediate basis. What is this decision going to look like 3 to 5 years from now? What's it going to look like 3 to 5 months from now?
Right.
Not what's it going to solve today. And a lot of we business owners, we think more about making decisions that are going to solve or put a band-aid on today instead of solving the long term and what it looks like in the long term.
Right. Yeah, definitely a blind spot for a lot of us, especially when you're first starting out and you are trying to sort of herd the cats, right? You get your
Right.
operation set up and everything. It feels like one little kitten's always running off and you're pulling them back, and so you can't look at the next litter, if you will. I don't have a better
Right.
analogy.
No, that I know. I understand what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. So where can people find you? Where can they get your book? Where can they connect with you? Maybe stalk
Okay.
you on social media.
So we give away our book on our website at nextstepcfo.net. It's a free download. You don't even have to put your email address in. It's our contribution to the business community. And but what I love to do is I love to interview small business owners for the next edition of my book. Why? Well, business is always we talked about this about 6 times. Business is always changing. A year ago, tariffs, we could hardly spell the word. So, because business is always changing, we know our strategies work. We just need industry information to prove what we already know. So, if they go to nextstepcfo.net and hit the contact button, or they could go to nextstepcfo.net/contact, fill out the contact form, and in the remarks section, put the word book interview. The way the book interview works, it's 60 minutes on Zoom. I present strategies from my book, and then the business owner will comment on the impact that strategy would have for business owners if they implemented it in their industry from an industry perspective. So it's safe. There's nothing to buy or anything like that. And so, and then we document it for the book, and that's it. But I could tell you this, I could guarantee you this, that the business owners will learn strategies that their competition isn't doing.
Right.
That I could guarantee if they do the book.
Amazing. All right. So we're going to put all that down in the show notes. Now, are you on LinkedIn or anywhere?
I am. I am. I am. I'm on LinkedIn. I had a radio show for 1 year on iHeartRadio. I also have a 15-minute big business segment every week on iHeartRadio. Yep. And so I'm out there. I'm posting constantly to social media. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll be able to get my information in your feed,
Okay.
because I'm constantly posting.
Amazing. All right. So we're going to put all of that down inside the show notes. So make sure you grab a copy, set up your interview. Let's see if we can't make differentiation maybe the next thing we want to focus on, in our business. And I really appreciate this conversation. I think it's incredibly important. And I love how reassuring you are that being different doesn't make you crazy. And, taking the time to move your mindset forward to evolve is going to make you successful.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Don. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
Me too. All right. We'll see y'all next time on the next episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to DawnKKennedy.com, and you can now check us out on YouTube, as well as, of course, any of your favorite platforms that host podcasts. Take care.